Queen Zaria loved sitting by the river. It was her favorite place. The water was calm, the air was cool, and the sound of the flowing river made her feel at peace. She often went there to think, to relax, and to be alone. On this day, she was heavily pregnant. Her belly was big, very big. The baby could come at any moment. She sat by the river, enjoying the quiet, when suddenly, a sharp pain struck her. Her heart jumped. She held her stomach and cried out. "Oh no, the baby is coming!" She screamed, hoping someone would hear her. "Help me!" she shouted, but no one came. She was alone. The pain grew worse, stronger than anything she had ever felt. She fell to the ground, clutching her belly, groaning and crying. There, by the river, Queen Zaria gave birth, alone. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. The pain was unbearable, but she endured it. Finally, the baby was born. She gasped for air, weak but relieved. She looked down at her child, expecting to feel joy. But when she saw the baby, she froze. Her eyes widened, and her mouth hung open in shock. The baby was white, not light-skinned, not pale, completely white, like fresh snow. Queen Zaria could not believe it. She stared at the baby, her mind racing. How is this possible? She was dark-skinned. The king, King Magnus, was dark-skinned. How could she have given birth to a child so white? Fear gripped her heart. The king will never believe me. He would think she had betrayed him. He would see this child and accuse her of being unfaithful. King Magnus was proud, arrogant, and feared by all. He was not a kind man. If he thought she had betrayed him, he would punish her. He might even take her life. He would never accept this child. Her hands shook as she looked at the baby. "I cannot take you to the palace," she whispered, her voice breaking with sadness. "The king will not let you live. I have no choice." With a heavy heart, Queen Zaria wrapped the baby in a soft cloth. Her legs felt weak, and her chest was tight as she walked to the river's edge. She placed the baby gently in the water. The river was calm, and it carried the child slowly away. "I am sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I am so sorry." But she could not stay there. She had to act quickly. She could not return to the palace with no pregnancy and no baby. She wiped her tears and made her way to an orphanage on the far side of the kingdom. An old woman greeted her. "Please," Queen Zaria begged. "I need a baby. I will pay you anything, but you must promise never to tell anyone I was here." The old woman looked at her with kind eyes and handed her a baby boy. He was healthy, dark-skinned, and perfect. Queen Zaria held him close and sighed with relief. She left quickly, thanking the woman and making her promise to stay silent. When Queen Zaria returned to the palace with the baby, there was a grand celebration. The servants clapped and cheered. The people sang songs. The king smiled proudly. The baby was named Prince Darius. But Queen Zaria was not happy. She smiled for the people and held the baby like a loving mother, but inside, her heart was heavy. She could not stop thinking about the child she had left in the river. Her secret was safe for now. But secrets do not stay hidden forever. As Queen Zaria walked away from the river, the baby she abandoned floated on the water. He cried, his small voice filled with sadness, but his mother was already far away. Soon, the baby began to sink. His tiny arms flailed as the water rose around him. Just then, a figure appeared in the water. A mermaid. Her name was Queen Nerida, the wise and powerful ruler of the mermaid kingdom. She saw the baby sinking and rushed to save him. Her long, shimmering tail sparkled as she swam. Swiftly, she lifted the child just in time. Who would leave such a beautiful child? Queen Nerida asked aloud. She looked around, hoping to find the baby's mother. But there was no one there. The baby cried in her arms, his small hands reaching out. Queen Nerida sighed. "Since no one is here, I will take you with me." She cradled the baby and swam down to her underwater kingdom. But as soon as she went underwater, the baby began to choke. His little body shook, and his face turned pale. "Oh no," Queen Nerida gasped. She suddenly remembered, humans cannot breathe underwater. She leaned down and kissed the baby softly on the forehead. It was a magical kiss. The baby gasped and took a deep breath. Suddenly, he stopped choking. His tiny legs shimmered and transformed into a silver mermaid tail. The baby had become one of them. Queen Nerida smiled. You are one of us now. She brought the baby to her kingdom, where the mermaids gathered around in wonder. They had never seen anyone like him before. His skin was pure white, glowing softly in the water. He is so different, one mermaid whispered. Look how bright he is, another added. Queen Nerida held the baby close. I will name him Prince Orion. Answer, Prince Orion became part of the mermaid family. 15 years passed. Prince Orion grew into a strong, fearless warrior. He swam like lightning, spoke the mermaid language fluently, and was the best fighter among them. The mermaids saw him as their protector and their hope for the future. Meanwhile, back on land, King Magnus ruled with arrogance. He believed Prince Darius was his real son and never suspected the truth. But the boy had grown to be as arrogant and cruel as his father. One evening, King Magnus sat alone in the courtyard, deep in thought. Queen Zaria approached him. My king, why do you look troubled? Is one child not enough? The king's face was hard to read. One child is enough, he said slowly. But I am waiting for someone. Queen Zaria's heart skipped a beat. Who are you waiting for? The king's eyes narrowed. That is not something a woman should ask. Inside, Queen Zaria was terrified. What if the one he is waiting for is the child I left by the river? Her past was catching up to her. King Magnus learned from an old prophecy that every 200 years, a special child was born with pure white skin. This child was a gift from the gods, bringing strength and prosperity to the kingdom. He realized the child should have been born in his reign, but he was nowhere to be found. The king called for the chief priest. The priest chanted and spoke to the gods. The child is alive, he said. King Magnus's heart pounded. Where is he? The priest hesitated. He is, with the mermaids. The king's face darkened. They have stolen my son. He sent a message to the mermaids, return my son within 3 days, or I will bring war upon you. But Queen Nerida refused. He is one of us now. The king gathered his army. The mermaids prepared for battle. The war between land and sea was about to begin. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the ocean, King Magnus and his warriors clashed with Queen Florida and her mermaid army. The battle was fierce, with waves crashing violently as the mermaids fought with supernatural agility, using their tridents and water magic. At first, the mermaid queen had the upper hand. Her warriors moved like the sea itself, striking with precision and overwhelming the king's forces. King Magnus struggled to keep up, his warriors falling back as the mermaids used their environment to their advantage. But just as it seemed the mermaids would claim victory, King Magnus roared in defiance. His pride and fury reignited his strength, and he launched a counterattack. His blade sliced through the water with deadly force, and one by one, the mermaids were forced back. Queen Florida, exhausted from battle, found herself locked in combat with the king. With a final surge of power, King Magnus knocked the mermaid queen to the ground. She gasped as he raised his sword high, ready to strike the final blow. But before the king could bring down his sword, a strong voice echoed across the battlefield. Stop! Everyone froze. Prince Orion, glowing with an ethereal light, swam between them, his young face filled with anger and determination. If you kill her, he said, his voice unwavering, I will never go with you. The king hesitated, his hand trembling. His eyes locked onto his son, his only son, the child he had fought so hard to reclaim. His heart pounded as he saw the defiance in Orion's eyes. I am not just your son, father, Orion continued. I am also part of this world. Queen Florida saved me, raised me, and I love her as I would my own mother. If you destroy her, you will lose me forever. The battlefield was silent. The warriors, both human and mermaid, looked at one another, uncertain of what would happen next. King Magnus slowly lowered his sword. His pride warred with his love for his son. Finally, with a deep breath, he turned to Queen Florida. Forgive me, he said, his voice rough but sincere. I let my anger blind me. I only wanted my son back. Queen Florida, still catching her breath, looked at Prince Orion. She saw the hope in his eyes and the pain in the king's. Finally, she nodded. Let there be peace. With those words, the battle ended. Both sides lowered their weapons. Warriors who had once fought with fury now stood in stillness, realizing that peace was the better path. King Magnus and Queen Florida shook hands, marking the end of their conflict. Prince Orion stood between them, smiling. Now, both our worlds can live together in harmony. With the war behind them, King Magnus took his son back to his kingdom. Orion bid farewell to Queen Florida and his mermaid family, promising to return to visit. As the white-skinned prince stepped onto the land for the first time in years, the people of the kingdom gasped in wonder. They whispered among themselves, realizing that this was no ordinary boy, he was a gift from the gods. With Orion's return, prosperity came back to the land. The crops flourished, the people thrived, and the kingdom experienced a peace it had never known before. Answer: two worlds, the land and the sea, remained forever united, thanks to the courage of a boy who refused to let hatred divide them.